Hey, so in this video I'd like to show a little bit how I did a LiPo conversion for my cordless tools. Now I've got these two Makitas. It's a drill and an impact wrench, and I really wanted to keep these because it's very hard to find a kit with these two exactly. You get more impact screwdrivers and they're perfectly fine. It's just that these old NiCad batteries have completely failed. Like this one is zero, they're not charging, they lose their charge in a really quick time, they lack power. So I've taken one pack so far, this one over here, and converted it to LiPos. Now I know there's tons of videos online that show you how to do this and everything, but I didn't want to do a typical conversion with like freaky different battery types or with cables hanging out of it. I wanted to keep the stock look as much as possible. So this thing looks completely like it did before. Nothing's really different on it unless you look closely, and it works a lot better than it did before. What I also really wanted to do, and that's kind of the reason I'm making this video, is I want to show that I'm reusing the original charger with different electronics inside. I'm keeping the form factor. I know I've got two cables hanging out here, but this is just for convenience sake if I ever need it. I don't actually have any LiPo chargers. And so this thing should just work. That was my plan. Like before, you plug in the battery and it starts charging. I'll actually show you. If I take the cable, connect it up, and then we will look at the lights. It's at 75% and it's charging. So this actually works absolutely fine, and the charger's been flawless. So I'm not going to make a step-by-step here, run you through everything I did, with me soldering. I just want to show you what components I used. So I'm going to start opening up the charger to show you the inside because it makes a bit more sense to show you that first. I planned this together, but the charger is sort of the easiest one. So screw this open. Okay, so opening this up, the inside is completely different. This is completely gutted. I opened this up, cut out a lot of stuff, and I used a different charger. I actually bought a LiPo charger for RC stuff. RC stuff tends to be pretty cheap. I got this to work inside there. So I cut out all the poles with my Dremel, cut the original housing of the LiPo charger open, and managed to fit this in there. Now the charger I used I bought this off Banggood for about 17 euros. It's a EV Peak E3. It's a 35 watt 3 amp charger, which does 4S, 3S, and 2S. So it's got 3 connectors there. I've added these 2 extra cables for a 3S and a 4S, and then what I did, and let's try and show you this clearly, there's actually 5 connectors on the charger here, and this is quite interesting because you need 5 to charge a 4S, a positive, a negative, and then the other 3 cells. So I soldered up all these things together, making sure to arrange a plan because the original one has positive here, negative there, and then I decided that this would be cell number 3, this would be cell number 2, and this would be cell number 1. Now just to show you, the original batteries don't have enough connectors for that. There's 2 on the sides here, so these 2. There's one over here and one over there, and these are actually for a temperature sensor, which we're not going to be using because the charger doesn't do it. So I had to actually add, see here, this connector is actually missing. It's probably for a different battery type. I had to add that connector in there. So that's done here on this guy. Yeah, there we go. So this one was actually Dremeled in there and then added in there. I'll talk more about that later. So charger was pretty straightforward. I actually took the original housing. You can see it here. It's this black plastic thing down there. Flipped it around, hot glued it in, and then it made it so that I could still screw down it with the original mounting screw posts. Then I took out the AC connector, actually desoldered that from the board, and moved it into the casing over here, which means that I can now nicely use one of these typical connectors. Everybody knows these. Yeah, there we go. Use one of these typical connectors, just easily plug it in there, take it out. Just don't want to do that when this thing's open. So put this to the side. Then for the battery, I'll take this apart, but I just want to point out first that these guys are pretty heavy. They're about 600-700 grams. This is less than half. This is 310 grams, while it's still got that same robust packaging. So I'll open this up. And once that is done, if I open this, you can see the battery sitting inside here. So what I actually have going on here is 4 of these 18650s. This is a slightly different one, and they've been placed together in series, and it uses a BMS, this one, to make sure that they're not being drained too much, they're not being overcharged, and that cells are being properly balanced. So I'll take this out. This is a little tricky. It's a bit of a squeeze in there. There we go. So you can see the BMS sits under the cells, and then all the connectors go up to the top here. So in the top, I don't know if you can see that properly, that's where the connectors sit, and they're all hooked up to the proper ones. I've actually written on here because it makes it much easier to recognize which one goes where. I have to keep track of these 5 connectors, and they all look the same all the time. So the battery cells that I used, they are LG ICR 18650 HB6. They're 1500 milliamp hours, so not so heavy. I actually picked these because they're a bit cheaper and it was a first test. And very important, they deliver up to 30 amps. You might think, oh, laptop batteries are much easier and cheaper to get a hold of, but they can't deliver such high currents, and these things can draw up to 20-25 amps or something, so I made sure to get some that can supply really hefty currents. Then the BMS I used, this also comes off Banggood. They're about 2-3 euros a piece if you buy them in sets of 3 or 5. This one also, and let me make sure that you can see this, this one also does up to 30 amps, so I made sure to match that. And 30 amps is just good because it's safer. I've got some margin there. Then I put these together with these sort of 4S pack holders, this little plastic piece that sits around it. This is actually 3D printed because it's just way cheaper to do that than to buy it, but you can buy them. And then let's see if you can see that well, I spot welded these together. Now I don't have a spot welding machine. I used a really ghetto method that I found on YouTube that involves a car battery and a solenoid, but it works okay as long as your battery's not too powerful. Motorcycle battery is good for that. And the spot welding was actually the trickiest part of the whole process. And I had to file down some of these edges a bit. I had to Dremel the inside of the case a bit. You can see it at the top there. And I added this extra connector to make sure I can balance charge if I take it out in case I have to debug it or whatever. And that actually worked pretty well for a while. Then I had one of these BMSs just die on me. It stopped doing anything. I replaced it by a spare one, and it worked again. So in general, wasn't a very difficult project. The spot welding is kind of annoying, and in terms of components, it's not very expensive. These batteries are about €2.50 each. The BMS is about €3. You have to get a bag of some connectors as well for the charger, some nickel plate and everything. I estimate per battery it's about 20-25 euros depending on what you pay for it. So it's actually the same as it would cost to redo these with new NiCad cells or to buy a cheap Chinese NiCad replacement battery, but I get a lithium battery that is much more powerful. So I've tested this on a few things, and it's a really big difference on what it can do compared to the old batteries, which were dying anyway. So much stronger now. And this really didn't cost me that much. So 17 euros for the charger, 20-25 for the pack. And if I compare that to on Amazon for a new impact wrench with 2 batteries and a charger, it's 400 euros. So I'm quite happy using this old stuff that works perfectly fine. Anyway, I hope I gave you some good insight, and good luck if you're going to try this yourself.